Welcome back, everybody, to another podcast.
Aw, look at Sully sitting behind you.
Yeah, I think you can see him in the background a little bit.
Can you?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, he looks so cute.
Yeah. He'll end up moving at some point. He cannot sit still when it comes to that. But welcome back. I realized that in the first two episodes, we really didn't introduce ourselves. So from now on, we'll try to make sure that we do that. So, hi, I'm Josh.
And I'm Taylor.
Welcome to Travel with Josh and Taylor, the podcast edition. Yeah, I don't know. So last week we talked about, is it safe to cruise in the Mediterranean? So I had said that we would talk more about that today, but then Taylor corrected me that...
While yes... Why is your phone ringing?
I don't know. It's not my phone. It's not ringing.
While this cruise that we're going to talk about was technically in the Mediterranean,
Yes.
we mostly went to Greek Isles. And when you booked this cruise, it was called a Greek Isles cruise.
Right. I mean, it is a way to differentiate or more specifically specify the area in which you're sailing within the Mediterranean. So
yes, because there's a lot to see in the Mediterranean. So the one that we went on in August, where we started in Barcelona and went through Italy, and that one was considered a Mediterranean cruise when you booked it. There's so many different areas of the Mediterranean. We kind of touched on that last time about the different places that you can visit. There's like Western, Eastern,
yeah.
kind of technically Northern and Southern, if you will,
Right.
just depending on where you go. So this one was a Greek Isles. So we were up in the, I forget what that like sea is called up there. Was it Aegean?
The Aegean Sea, yes.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we kind of like went up into that little area. But this was a cruise that I did not realize I really wanted to do until our friend Marianne mentioned it. And I was like, I think I need to do that cruise.
Yeah. It was, we chose to do this cruise really only because she brought it up and was insistent that we go. Really because...
She was a little bit.
I don't know if this was the actual thing at the beginning, but her kids were going and her daughter was going to propose to her girlfriend. They were going to get engaged. So she kind of wanted us to also be there to capture that moment.
Which we did, and it was beautiful.
We did, and it was really great. So, but I want to mention, I think maybe we should kick off this episode of talking about Mediterranean or this Greek Isles cruise in going with the ship that we chose to go on. Again, Taylor and I did not choose this. It was already basically chosen for us by our friend Marianne.
Yeah, there's like plenty of cruise lines and itineraries.
Eat the microphone, honey. Thank you. It's not down here. It doesn't work. It needs to be close.
There are plenty of cruise lines and itineraries that visit the Greek Isles. You can start actually in Greece and go around the Greek Isles. There's ones that visit certain Greek Isles, but the itinerary that our friends chose that we decided to join them on started in Haifa, Israel, which seemed unique to us. However, we ended up finding out that a lot of Greek Isles cruises will stop in Israel.
Yeah, and another thing...
Not all, but a lot.
Yeah, but another thing, too, to mention about this is that MSC is not the only one that does this, but...
Yes, that's who we cruised with, was MSC.
They seem to do it with most of their cruises in that they are what are called Interport cruises, yes. Mm-hmm. Which
Royal
means...
Caribbean does a lot of those, too.
Yeah. It is mostly, I think, seems to be mostly contained within the Med as an option. And I think that just is because it's very easy to kind of do this. But essentially, if you don't know what that means, it just means that at most ports of call, those are also embarkation and disembarkations for guests starting or ending their cruise. Mm-hmm. So while our cruise was a 7-night round trip Greek Isle cruise from Haifa, meaning we started and ended in Haifa, there were people who were getting on at the next port of call, which I think was...
gosh, I don't even remember the itinerary at this point.
Cyprus was the next port.
Yes, Cyprus was the first one.
Yeah, that was our first port of call. There were people who got on there. There were also people who got off there. They started and ended their cruise there.
Yep.
So it is a little strange, and it does make your cruise experience, I think, in some cases, a little more stressful or just a little more like irritating. That's probably not the best word, but
I think it just depends on how the cruise line decides to run those days.
Sure.
We did not necessarily like how MSC did it because there was a lot of closing of bars and there weren't activities. And so this cruise kind of turned out for us to just be a place to lay our head at night, a place to eat dinner at night, and a way to get from one place to another. Because there's not a lot happening.
If you have taken an Interport cruise before with another cruise line or maybe even with MSC, let us know what you thought the experience was when it came to being on the ship during those times throughout the day. So, most of the time, embarkation in those Interports for those new passengers coming on board isn't until after at least 12 o'clock, if not closer. I was going to say
at least after 11, if not later.
If not closer to like 1 or 2. And during those times when they officially start the embarkation process, you will find, at least this is the way it was for us on MSC, that the elevators are not accessible unless you are in a wheelchair, probably,
which was
I would
honestly
assume.
Crazy.
It was, very frustrating. And a lot of like the bars and the lounges are closed as well, like Taylor said, because their staff members are having to go to the specific areas to do their safety stuff. What's it called?
Muster.
Yes.
Something that I feel like has been a common theme for us in the last year plus, just because I think maybe we've been traveling more and going to different places, and this will basically keep going back to that like first podcast episode that we did was all about expectations. The price of this cruise was kind of dirt cheap. So we kind of had a mindset like, what is this really going to be like for what we paid?
Yeah.
And like I said, we ended up realizing this was just going to be a way to get us from one place to another.
Right.
And basically our hotel to sleep every night.
Yeah.
And for us, most of the time, unless we have like really high expectations for something because we paid a lot of money and we read a lot of good reviews, of course we would have high expectations for that. But we, most of the time, are able to adjust our expectations when we arrive somewhere. And once our embarkation, you have to go back and watch the embarkation day video because
it was bonkers.
It was like, what is happening? Granted, we got some really good experience from it, and that's why we post these videos, so we can give you the experience that we had so that you know what to expect and don't go in thinking it's going to be one way, and then it turns out to be exactly like what we had, and then that way you can not be disappointed.
Yeah.
Granted, we weren't really disappointed. It was more just annoying in our perspective. But from that first day, it basically changed our perspective for the whole entire rest of the cruise.
Yeah. And I think it may not be totally fair to lay blame completely on MSC.
No,
we did find out later on that like this was probably an issue with just the port.
Yes, because it wasn't their normal port.
Right. I think they were doing construction or something like that. And so it was still very odd in the way that it was run. Yes. Still, even retrospectively thinking about it, I feel like it could still have been done better.
I mean, it was also in a very different country.
Right.
That was the first cruise we ever did that started in another country.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So, I mean...
It got us prepped for the next, what we could call maybe the real med cruise. Not that one wasn't a real one.
Which was very much like a cruise that you would have got on in, like, Florida.
Yeah, it was very different.
So it was very different in Barcelona.
I want to bounce back, though, real quick to talk about pricing here and how Taylor was mentioning about a place to lay her head at night and expectations. So... Excuse me, I don't remember the exact cost of this. I could look it up, but I don't remember.
It was not very expensive for a cruise.
I want to say that, like, with a drink package...
Wi-Fi.
It
was like the basic
It was
Wi-Fi.
a basic Wi-Fi, yeah. And a balcony room. It was like $2,500 or something. Like
it had to have been around that because that's what I was thinking.
Ridiculously stupid how cheap this cruise was. Now,
for 7 nights. 7 nights.
7 nights, yeah.
7 nights.
And there could be a lot of varying factors about that. Maybe sailing out of Israel, I don't know, but
also, if you think about, because I was actually just pricing out some cruises, and you can get a 7-night cruise on like Royal Caribbean or Norwegian or whatever for about $2,500 in a balcony room for 7 nights, depending on what ship you go on. But that doesn't include Wi-Fi. That doesn't include a beverage package. And you're also sailing out of Florida versus sailing out of a country like across the world.
Right. Maybe this episode should really be focused just more on MSC, because I feel like there's a lot of stuff that we could really dive into here to talk about it. And
I wanted to mention this to you before we started this episode, and I forgot. I don't necessarily want to talk about MSC because I feel like that's something that we talked about pretty in depth in our actual videos from the cruise.
Yeah, I suppose so.
And on our Patreon podcast, we laid it on really hard.
Well, yeah, we did.
About that.
We did.
So I just don't necessarily want to keep talking about the experience we had on MSC.
Sure. So,
I would rather just talk about the times we had at the destinations because those are the memories that I think about the most from that trip.
Okay, well then we won't dwell on MSC.
Sorry, I keep not looking at the camera. I keep looking at Josh across the room.
Well, we will not delve too much deeper than into MSC, other than I just want to finish off by just saying a few things about it real quick, which is that with a drink package, you can get some cocktails that are only on their bar menus, which was really strange. They won't really make you anything else unless it's on the menu. If you ask for something, they will seem perplexed, like they've never seen it before. Food I thought was okay.
Food was fine.
I think what was to be expected for the price that we paid for it.
Yeah.
And getting there to Israel, obviously you can fly whoever you want to fly with. Mm-hmm. We flew directly into Tel Aviv. So, or not, I guess not directly into.
No, we didn't.
We made a connection in Atlanta, we flew directly from Atlanta to Tel Aviv.
You can never get a flight from Orlando directly to somewhere international. You have to connect in Miami, Atlanta, somewhere or JFK.
Else. So, but going back to kind of like the safe thing, we talked about this a little bit, but we were only there in Tel Aviv for literally 5 minutes. We grabbed our bags, jumped on the train, and got to the port. So
Marianne almost forgot her bag.
We
found it, and then we got on the train.
So being on the ship, place to lay our heads at night, and get to explore, I think, a lot of really great destinations. And I will go as far to say that Taylor and I probably didn't plan anywhere near as much as we probably should have for this cruise, especially in places like Cyprus, where we did do
we booked an excursion.
We booked an excursion with MSC, which was fine. Yeah. We did another excursion with MSC, right, in one other place, I want to say. Turkey. Yes.
Kusadasi.
Yeah, Kusadasi. So I think the one thing that's going to stick out, and I'm sure Taylor's going to agree with me on this, is going to be when we went to Athens.
The best day of the trip. Yeah. And it just happened to be our anniversary that day. Yeah. And it was this is bad to say maybe, we kind of almost forgot it was our anniversary. We knew our anniversary was during this trip.
Right.
But you get so confused when you go on an international, international where you're changing a lot of time zones. You start to get confused about what actual day it is, what time it is sometimes. And we use a calendar called Time Tree. And so sometimes the days will get mixed up on there whenever it's flipping time zones. I hate that it does that, but it does. So we kind of forgot it was our anniversary on our Athens day until we were looking at the Parthenon, and we kind of looked at each other and we're like, oh my God, it's our anniversary. What a cool anniversary. Yeah. We will not forget that because it was definitely our best port day of the trip.
Yeah. So cruising through the Greek Isles, you're going to have a lot of different options when it comes to specific itineraries, right? Not everybody's going to do it the same way. Again, getting on and getting off the ship can vary from being in port or from actually being docked to having to tender. So, I'm
pretty sure Athens is actually a really popular embarkation and debarkation destination. Because if I'm always looking at like Royal Caribbean and Norwegian cruises because that's what we have personally enjoyed the most.
Right.
And I always see that they have embarkation day at Athens.
Yeah.
And so that just seems to be the most popular, like, easiest to get to place.
Yeah. Now, what I will say, though, when you're looking at doing a Greek Isles cruise or even something in the Mediterranean that does have interport stops, take the time or reach out to your travel agent, which is a good way for me to segue into
Go Getaway.
If you're looking to plan your next destination vacation, head on over to www.gogogetaways.com to start planning today. What I will say is to get a hold of your travel agent when you're like talking about pricing, and they should already know this, but it's funny because depending on which port of call that you actually embark the ship can actually vary the price of the overall cruise. Mm-hmm. And we found this out with MSC, also with Royal Caribbean, was that embarkation in Haifa, for whatever reason, I can only speculate, was much cheaper than it was to embark in Athens. Not to mention, flights to get into Haifa were also cheaper than going to Athens.
Much cheaper.
You know, so I think because maybe Athens is just more popular, there's more people there, getting on, getting off, it's more well-known, it's more expensive. So keep that in mind. It will obviously, if your like whole goal is to just see Athens a lot, then that's obviously going to affect your decision-making, right?
And I mean, if you've cruised in the U.S., even if you look at cruises that are on like the same class of ship with the same cruise line sailing out of Port Canaveral versus Miami, Port Canaveral is going to be more expensive 9 times out of 10.
Got that radius, that close proximity to
Central
Disney.
Florida, the theme parks, they know there's a lot of people there. It's pretty convenient transportation to get to Port Canaveral. So it's, if you've never been on an international cruise, that's a good way to think of it is, you know, Port Canaveral is more expensive than most of the other ports in Florida.
Yeah. And I would also recommend, too, if you're going to do a Greek cruise, right now is a great time to do one, especially as we begin to kind of get out of the current time of the year. So we're recording this in March. You know, as we start to make our way into spring, it's not really too hot yet in Europe.
We went in like the mid to end of May.
Yeah. So you'll still get some of those nicer, warmer temperatures without it being scalding hot. But, wow. I have literally no idea where I was going with that. Other than I was just going to say something about eventually somehow I was going to circumvent back to if you are looking to do a cruise like this, Athens is a really great place to start. Even if it is a little more expensive. Go in a
few days before.
100%.
I wish we would have had more time in Athens because that was the best day of the trip.
And I was going to say either before or after, but it is, and as always, recommendation, always do your land portion first and then do your cruise portion.
Because the cruise portion, most of the time, is a little more relaxing than the land portion.
Right.
Just because your hotel / transportation of the cruise is taken care of and you can relax a little bit more. We don't always relax a little bit more, but you can relax a little bit more.
Well, and I think the other thing too is like the Greek Isles, when we're like kind of sitting down and thinking about it, or the Med in general, is certainly a cruise where you can have a very relaxing vacation. You know, but for Taylor and I, we're totally fine with, at least I am fine with it. She might disagree, but
I can't wait to hear this. I have no idea what he's about to say.
I'm always okay with paying less. Knowing that we're going, like paying less for a cruise, knowing that we can spend extra money out doing whatever we want, right? So I'm
what
not
do
necessarily.
You mean by that?
What I mean by that is kind of the trade-off, right? It's like the analogy of Disney, which is something I always use.
Because I know you don't mean based on the room category and getting an inside stateroom, because you're the one that always says, we're going to book an inside stateroom, and then guess what he books? A balcony. Every single time.
Well, what I mean, though, is that like...
That's why I want to know. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that when I go on a cruise, and it's to somewhere like our group cruise here, which is coming up into Iceland, into the UK, or through the Med, I'm not necessarily concerned about having all the bells and whistles on the ship.
Granted, this cruise is going to have...
The Prima is a brand new ship. It's going to have all the bells and whistles. It's got a lot of bells and whistles,
and it's a really nice ship. But we have 2 sea days, so...
Yes, but that's not necessarily my concern. My concern is like I'm going into a place I've never been before. So if that's your mindset that you want to spend as much time as possible going out on the port days and doing as much as you can, look for those cruises or ask your agent to help you find those cruises that are cheaper, that get you to those destinations. And just keep in the back of your mind that, like, you know, you're taking kind of that trade-off, that like your service and stuff on the ship might not be as great, but you're getting to spend a lot of really great time out and about. There he goes. So yeah, I told you he wasn't going to stay there the whole time. And I bring that up because this is kind of where I think that Taylor and I made some mistakes in not planning more for this trip.
We booked it pretty last minute too.
It's like what,
however,
February?
I think since that trip, we have gotten a lot better at planning last minute trips for ourselves.
Yeah.
Because time-wise, we're not so constricted to when we can travel. I know there's a lot of people that, you can only take time off certain time of the year, or you have to maneuver around other people's vacations. We are a lot more flexible, especially with my job now. We're a lot more flexible. So we can plan a little bit better last minute because we don't have to stick to certain dates.
Yeah.
We can kind of go whenever it is we want, or based on pricing, we'll go then.
Right. Well, what I also mean by that too, though, is that instead of relying on those excursions through the cruise line, this was a good opportunity for us to really try to find some private stuff to do. I think one of my biggest disappointments from this cruise was in Cyprus when we went to what I thought was going to be like this really cool, like wine museum, and we were going to see the vineyards, and we were going to see the whole like process of how they do it and all this really great stuff. And then we show up. It was
still cool to taste the wine, but
yeah, but we show up at this little building. There's just pictures in there.
I try to be really optimistic if you can't tell. I'm looking for the high point.
They had like a few artifacts, I guess you could call them. And then you sat down and watched a video of the process.
There were literally people around us falling asleep.
Yeah, it was disappointing. And I think, further deeper diving, reviewing, whatever, we would have definitely skipped that and found something that we could have done on our own. But
we really didn't research Cyprus and what else we could do there.
Right.
And I think another thing about it, because I've been thinking about this since we did like our Mediterranean cruise last time, and even going into this cruise this time for Iceland in July, I think we may have also been a little nervous going on our first... I say international, not that the Caribbean and the Bahamas aren't international, because technically they are, but starting from an international port overseas.
You're literally so much further from the United States.
You are so much further from the United States. And like we had been to Europe previously, but not really. And so it was just like, if we go out on our own and we miss the ship, what do we do?
Right.
Like we know what to do from reading online.
Yeah.
But it's like when you're actually experiencing that, you don't want to risk that happening to you.
Yeah.
So I think maybe for that cruise, I know for me it definitely was on the day we were in Athens walking around by ourselves. It was in the back of my mind the whole time, like, what if something happens that we miss this ship? But also knowing Josh, who has TSA pre-check but will still get to the airport 4 hours before a domestic flight. He shakes his head at me, but he does. I knew we would be back to the ship in time.
Listen, you never know. The car could break down. There could be something else that happens. What are you going to do? I'm just saying.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But also, calm down. I think it was just more of like, this is our first time going somewhere international. This cruise was super cheap. Like, we're not going to a ton of destinations, but we went to technically like 4 Greek Isles.
I think so, yeah.
On this 7-night cruise. So it was just kind of like us getting a taste of an international cruise, I think. And so kind of figuring out, like, do we want to do excursions? Do we want to walk around by ourselves? And we did get to do that a little bit. But the excursions that we did book, which there was, I think we did 2 excursions through.
Yeah, we did the one in
line.
Cyprus and we did the one in Turkey.
Our friends had been on more international trips than us. Like many more international trips. So when we went out with them, we did feel a little bit more comfortable because they had done that before. But now the Mediterranean cruise we did back in August, and then the Mediterranean or the Northern Europe cruise we have coming up in July, we planned a lot of stuff on our own because I think that trip helped us feel more comfortable about timing of getting back to the ship and how far the port is going to be away from everywhere. And I think it also helped us realize we needed to do more research before our trips.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, too, is like if you're going for the first time, don't feel stupid or overwhelmed or something like that.
Because everybody has questions. Even experienced people have questions.
But don't feel like, don't feel wrong if you do want to do an excursion with the cruise line. I mean, it's
I think it's a very safe. Last time.
Yeah, it's a very safe option, and it guarantees that you will make it back to the ship.
Convenience.
Even if you're, there's a car that rolls over and explodes on the highway and shuts down the entire highway for like a day, like either the ship waits for you or they find a way to get you to the ship. So don't worry. But yeah, I mean, your time is really valuable. And I think that this also goes back to what I was saying earlier, which is that like what's really great about a cruise is that you get to experience a little bit of everything, but you only get a taste of those ports. So the limited amount of time that you have, you want to really try to experience as much as you possibly can. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes a excursion through the cruise line isn't your best option to do that.
Yes.
But other times it can be. So, that's where coming into that research, which we didn't really do a lot of, certainly helps.
Yes, because we were looking at some tours for our cruise that's coming up in July. Iceland, Norway, Brussels, and Amsterdam. We thought maybe we would book some of our excursions through the cruise line and then do other days on our own or book through Viator, which we ended up not booking any excursions through the cruise line. Not because they were expensive, because they are a little bit more expensive than if you go out on your own or book through Viator or whatever, a tour company specifically. They don't always stop. So I forget which one of the tours it was. It was saying like you get to see this, and this. But if you actually read the description, you didn't actually stop at half of those places. You just drove by. And we were like, if we're going out there, I want to stop. Right. So we ended up looking and finding through Viator a couple tours that were way better because they do stop at those places. So you do have to be careful booking through a third party time-wise because you need to make sure that you're going to be off the ship in time, but then you also need to make sure you're going to be back to the ship with plenty of time to get on before it leaves. Which, fortunately, our days are long enough in all of the ports that we have plenty of time for the excursions that we ended up booking through third party. And then the days that we're planning on just kind of walking around the towns by ourselves and doing stuff. But it is important to read the descriptions of tours because I remember on our last Mediterranean cruise, there were a lot of people complaining about some of the excursions they did, wanting to go get their money back. And the people at the counter are like, it's in the description that that's what the tour was. Like, we're not giving you your money back because you didn't like it. Like, do your research to know.
Yeah.
Like, just because you don't have a good time doesn't mean you get your money back for something. Like, that's unfortunately not how that works.
So let's talk about the port stop that was tendered, which would have been our second stop, I believe, because getting off that
Are you
first
talking
day.
about Santorini?
Yes, Santorini. So let's talk about Santorini because with Santorini, we did not do an excursion through the cruise line. We actually booked a private tour, not me or Taylor, but
our friends did.
But Marianne and their fam did and took us along. So a couple of things that I want to mention when it comes to booking private tours. This really applies to anything, but talking about our cruise that we did. So we did a private catamaran that sailed in and around Santorini, took us to a couple different spots, which was really cool. We got a little history and knowledge of the island. It used to be like this much larger island, and then there was like an earthquake or a volcano explosion and a collapse, and it has created the little islands that you see now. And if I could make one suggestion, when you're looking to do those private excursions, try to do them in small groups. So even if you're only a couple, or maybe there's 4 of you or 6 of you, try to do those private, smaller group tours. And the reason that I say that is because they are far more willing to cater to your needs and your wants
and can change much more easily on a whim.
Yeah, then they would if it is, say, we saw some of the bigger boat, like they were like old, like pirate-looking ships, right?
And those were excursions people booked through the cruise line.
Yeah. Now, of course, they would be fine booking it through the cruise line, but what I mean by that is where I'm going with this, just essentially that like we were able to communicate with the private vendor, and they assured us that like no matter what, we will make sure that you get back to where you need to be to get on the ship so that it is not missed, no matter what. Right. So I think that that's what's really great when you are working with like a vendor who's taking 20, 30, 40 people out, even, when it's a private kind of tour.
Third party.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have that ability to kind of, not really negotiate, but,
Yeah, because not all those people won't always be from your cruise. Like the other people that are on it, that could be people that are staying in Santorini.
Exactly.
Also booked that excursion for that third party. They don't have to be back on a ship.
Yep.
So when you do a private excursion, it's much more easily guaranteed that you can get back to your ship on time, which worked out for us because it was literally just us and our friends. There was, 10 of us total?
I think so.
And we had a great time.
Yeah.
Josh talks about the lunch that we had on that boat.
Oh, it was amazing.
All the time.
It was a great, like, classic Mediterranean-style food. And I think that's another thing that we really loved about this, or at least I loved about it, was that we got to eat authentic food. And that's something that, like,
something I bring up every time we talk about a trip.
I mean, if you've watched our videos before, or even go back and watch this series, we're always talking about trying to find authentic food to eat, and this wasn't, I think that actually this would have been the first stop where we had authentic food that was Mediterranean. The next place would have probably been Athens.
Probably.
And then Turkey.
Yeah.
And then capping it off with our Israel. Our Jerusalem
tour. We ate a
tour.
lot of good food on this trip.
So, yeah, and it was really great. And again, I think they're in the video. I don't remember what the name of the company is off the top of my head, but if you go back and watch that video from Santorini, if you're doing a tour,
I would book a tour with them again.
Absolutely.
It was great.
They were fantastic. I will say the only questionable thing about their character
I know what you're going to say.
Was that the one, I don't know what you'd call her.
Guide, I guess.
Sure. She claimed that her favorite music was American country. And I couldn't get over it. I said, no.
Like, what?
Like, please put Mediterranean.
Like Greek music
back on, please. But yeah, I think that was, and it was another day too where it was colder. So
it was a little chilly.
It was chilly to be out there.
We almost didn't go.
We almost didn't go.
And I would have been really disappointed if we didn't because we ended up having such a great time.
Yeah. And I really wanted to go because, again, I'm always looking for those kind of opportunities to do something that, like, you might not ever get to do again or whatever, and we had the opportunity to go and swim in the Aegean Sea over at the volcano with the quote-unquote hot springs, which were...
You did say it was warm.
Yeah, it was warmer than the water that I was swimming in. It was like room temp. I mean, it was, not,
I'm sorry.
hot.
The best part of that excursion, the funniest part of that excursion, was when we got to the second swimming spot, while they were like finishing cooking the food. You and Gabby jumped off and swam in the water.
Oh, right, yeah.
And Josh had taken his shirt off, and Josh is kind of pale, if you don't know.
You couldn't
and
guess.
The water was crystal clear.
Oh, it was beautiful.
Crystal clear. And Josh was like swimming around, and we're watching them. And then we were just up on the boat and we're talking. And Josh like dove down because there were some fish like way down at the bottom. And Nani turned around and looked and goes, "Oh my gosh, there's a squid!" And we all start dying laughing because it was Josh.
Yeah, I don't know where like the squid.
Well, we were all
from,
at
but-
first we were all like, "Oh my gosh, there's this like giant fish down there." And then as he started to get closer, we're like, "Oh my gosh, that's Josh's pasty body down in the water."
Yep, just my pasty skin.
It was hilarious.
So I will say the one thing that was a little disappointing, though, about that excursion for the day that we did was that most of the group wanted to be able to go back into Santorini and do some shopping.
I did have time to buy. I bought the sweatshirt before the tour,
Yeah,
but still.
but we did kind of have to hustle from the drop-off location to get back to the ship just to make sure that we got there in time to catch.
But we
the last
did still
tender.
get to walk down the steps,
Oh yeah. I mean, we did have
which was cool.
Again, this comes back
legs were
to
shaking.
Taylor making fun of me for being at the airport 4 hours early with my TSA pre-check, and the fact that we certainly did have time to stop and probably shop a little bit. But I think the anxiety of being like not where I can physically touch the ship.
Yes, because it was a tender port.
Right, it was a tender
Yeah.
port. So, and again, if you've watched the series, this would be our second day on the ship.
I think the last tender was like 30 minutes before the ship left, too. So.
Yeah, our trust with MSC just wasn't there. So, I wasn't really trusting that like the last tender would be there at the last tender time, that they actually might leave earlier. So, but yeah, I mean, it was really great. We got to walk down all of those steps and nobody slipped and fell into donkey poop.
I slipped at the very bottom and almost fell in the donkey
Right.
poop with my white shorts on.
Yep.
I caught myself.
Would have been glorious. Would have been such a
It
great,
had started raining when we were like
Yeah.
over halfway down, and the rocks started to get a little slippery.
Yeah.
Because there's like rocks and hay and some donkey poop.
Yeah.
So you had to be careful.
Yeah, it was good.
And we were hustling down those stairs. It took us over 30 minutes to get down.
Yeah, so there is a tram or whatever you want to call gondola that does take you from the top down. It seemed like it was kind of a longer line. We thought we might be waiting a while, and we're like, we can get down there faster if we just
Half
walk.
of our group took the gondola, and they
Yeah.
were down about 15 minutes before we were.
We didn't. I don't even think we made it halfway when we saw them going down the gondola.
We saw
so.
Sherry's pink jacket.
But yeah, so it was fun. It was a lot of fun. But again, another thing just to keep in mind. So let's talk about Athens, because
The best day.
this certainly was, I think, really the best day for both of us. Was a day that we didn't plan a lot ahead of time, but we knew
We were going to go to the Parthenon.
we knew what we wanted to do, and we kind of left the day open for things in between. Kind of like
just
what we
walking
did.
around.
Yeah, kind of like what we did with our California trip, where we flew into Vegas. We had certain points that we wanted to reach to by the end of the day, and it would leave us time in between to do stuff. So, biggest mistake here was not just paying for a taxi or a Lyft or Uber or something.
Josh's biggest
Right.
mistake on this day.
To take us closer
To the train station.
Well,
Or even to the Parthenon.
even to the Parthenon. I mean, we decided to walk from the port to the train station. Now, granted, hold on.
We did not decide anything.
Depending on
Josh
where your ship actually docks at, puts you
Closer.
significantly closer to where the train station is.
Ours was not close.
No, we were pretty far.
Josh was like, 15-minute walk at the most. We'll be there in a couple minutes.
I said that 3 or 4 times probably.
45 minutes later,
Yeah.
we made it to the train station.
But again, very easy. I mean, this was our first time really using the train system at all in Europe. We did use it, I guess, a little bit in Haifa, but that's not really considered part of like Europe. So, but it was really easy to do and gave us some really great experience for.
The next trip.
Yeah, or actually, I guess we had already done the river cruise. So Alan had actually helped us a little bit with doing the trains. and things
With
like
the
that. So,
underground in London.
yeah. But it was easy. I mean, we got right there to where the Parthenon was at and made the most glorious climb up over the hill to see the Parthenon, right?
We were actually just walking up a hill recently, and I said, oh.
Wait, the Parthenon, right? Yeah. Not the Pantheon.
Pantheon is in Italy.
That's in Italy. That's in Rome. Or
yes, Rome.
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Parthenon is at the top of the hill.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. But whatever. Yeah. So there was a guy coming out this one exit, and he's like, he was American. We heard him like talking, and we're like, oh, he's American. So we talked to him, and we were like, hey, is this like the entrance to the Parthenon? He's like, oh yeah. He's like, you just got to like hike up this hill. And I'm like,
yeah.
There's gotta be a regular entrance, like that you can walk in like a path. I'm like, there is no way climbing up over this hill of trees and rocks is the way to get there.
Listen, we took the same path that Hercules himself took as a child, climbing the mountain to the top. I just imagine in my head that that's, it's like a pilgrimage from the bottom to the top of the hill. It wasn't that bad.
It was very, like, 80 degrees up.
Was not.
Yes, it was. Now, if we would have walked maybe a tenth of a mile more up the street.
If we would have walked 10 minutes, yes, continuing down the street.
Not even 10 minutes, maybe 5, was the actual entrance to the Parthenon that you walk on the path.
But then we would have avoided the view.
You're right. We would have missed that excellent view.
Yeah.
That had a staircase that would take you up to it if you came in the regular entrance instead of climbing up over the hill.
Yeah, but it's still the reveal of it up there on top of the hill.
It was an experience.
It's really great.
Put it that way. But yes, we did get a really great view. And then there was these like young, I would say they were like college age guys walked past us and saw us like setting up a tripod to take a picture. And the one walked up and he's like, hey, I can take a picture for you, no problem.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I will say that was one nice thing is you could like anybody that was at these like iconic locations, if you will. If you hear somebody speaking English and you ask them, can you take it, even if they don't speak English, if you just hold up your phone, like they know.
Most people know, yeah.
Like you want them to take a picture.
Right.
So they took some pictures for us. We took some pictures for some other people. Of course, we took some selfies because you have to do that.
Right.
But we got an excellent view of Athens from up on the top of this little. We weren't even up to the Parthenon yet, which was up even higher on a different hill.
Yeah.
But we had a cool view of the Parthenon in the background. We had a cool view of Athens.
Yeah.
And then eventually we did take the. Are they like marble?
The marble staircase?
The marble stairs to get up there? It was so slippery.
I think some of them are, yeah. It is pretty slick, especially if it starts raining.
Yeah, you got to be careful, even when it's dry.
Which fortunately it didn't for us, but, that kind of leads into another thing that I think I certainly touched on in the video. But if you have the ability to get to the Parthenon before the cruisers arrive, it is advantageous for you to do so, because otherwise you'll be waiting in a pretty long line. I think for us to get to the top, it took, almost an hour? Did it take that long?
I was going to say 45.
Like, it took a long time. It was
something like that.
And it's not like a single file line either. It is a single file line until you get to the actual gate where they scan your tickets.
Yes, and then it becomes a clump.
Yeah, and then it just kind of becomes a herd. And
it is a herd.
And it is.
And you are back to back, shoulder to shoulder.
It's a good time to protect your belongings and make sure that everything is secured. Pickpocketing is a big thing in Europe, but once you got to the top,
pickpocketing is a thing everywhere. When you're in a tight crowd.
But once you get to the top, though, I mean, it opens up. It's nice and spacious. It was beautiful. We certainly could have spent more time up there than we did.
Oh my gosh, we could have.
But,
it was awesome.
Yeah, but I think we were hungry.
I loved that. We were hungry.
So we wanted to find something to eat.
Which we did.
Yeah. And again, I think that this is another good opportunity to try and find something unique. You can certainly find fast food establishments that are here in the States.
McDonald's.
That are over there.
Burger King.
But,
Starbucks.
Live outside of your comfort zone and go to someplace unique. So that's what we did. What do we search, like TripAdvisor or Google or something?
Yelp. I think we were on Yelp and just looked up.
Yeah.
You can just literally just do a Google search of like the location that you're at and say like, whatever type of food you're looking for, whether it's fast food or like cafe or coffee, dessert, bakery, whatever. We were looking for some type of little like cafe on the street, and we found a cute little place. I can't remember the name of it, but I'm pretty sure it's in the video. I have pictures or something on Instagram of it. But we got our. Where are you going? I
just have to do my
get up and check everything.
Get up and check, make sure it's all looking good real quick while we are 45 minutes in, you know. So if it was messed up,
well, too late now.
45 minutes too
late.
Audio
only.
Yeah, sorry. Continue.
But yeah, we ended up coming down from the Parthenon and just kind of walked some side streets until we found some place that we wanted to go. Yeah. It was a place that I had found, and then Josh got on there and he saw it on there too, and we were like, well, let's just go to this place. We ended up walking down some really cute little streets. There was barely any cars driving around, so you could literally walk down the middle of the road.
They're so tight, you know.
They were literally just like little alleys, but they were super cute. Yeah. So we got some pictures down in some of them, and then we finally made it to the little cafe. It was on a like hill, so the seats were kind of like tiered up through the restaurant. It was outside. There was some indoor seating, but we sat outside because that was part of the experience for us. And
fresh air and cigarette smoke.
Don't tip in Greece because they think you're crazy.
Yeah, I did do that, and the server came running back as we were trying to leave, and he was like,
"Take this."
And I was like, "No, it's for you, man." And he was like,
he like went over and talked to another server, like, "Why did he give me this?"
He's probably like, "Stupid Americans."
That's probably exactly what he said. But we got oh my gosh, what did we get to eat? I can't.
I got baklava.
You had baklava for dessert. That was good. We had coffees.
Absolutely the best that I've ever had. I mean, it was
very honey.
Oh my gosh.
Lots of honey.
But it was so fresh though. Mm-hmm. Like it was not, I think all too often, especially
what was
here.
the other food that we got?
I don't even, I think we got
falafel.
Falafel?
Is that what we got?
We got like meatballs or something too, didn't we?
Maybe it was meatballs.
Yeah, I don't remember.
They were like Greek meatballs because they had like mint or something in them.
Yes, but they were good. Yeah.
I forget. We got something else too. Yeah. It was good.
Everywhere here that I get baklava at, it's usually like crushed, you know? It's not flaky, and I mean, it's still flaky, but it's not fluffy. Yeah,
this one was fluffy. It was crazy.
They're always like dense. This was, oh my gosh, it was amazing. So, we did also, I would recommend purchasing this ticket beforehand. We purchased it's like a city pass, like attraction ticket thing.
Yeah, so we were able to go to some of the other like archaeological sites.
Yeah, so it just allowed us to go to a lot of places, and there were a lot of places we didn't end up going to that we could have gone to, but for lack of time, we didn't make it to. So, but I think another thing again too is when you get out into these places and you're exploring the cities, like go out and explore the cities, because we found like the coolest thing, I thought, which was those markets.
Mm-hmm. The markets were cool. We didn't end up buying anything, but just walking through there was really cool.
I mean, I'm sure like some of them probably have not real things, but...
Of course. That's everywhere.
But it was just really cool to see. It's like a flea market, you know? They had all kinds of really cool stuff, like ancient historical things, like military things.
If we wouldn't have kept walking like down some of the streets, we would have never found it.
Right, yeah.
It was like... kind of hidden. It wasn't on one of the main streets.
Yeah.
It was down like these little alleys that we started walking down through.
It was super cool. So definitely like Athens on a Greek Isle cruise is a must do. I think you should definitely do it on your own. It gives you just more time.
On a cruise, like...
Oh, yeah. But I mean, like we're talking about...
Athens would definitely be a place to visit.
Yeah. But I mean, we're talking about the Greek Isles cruise. So.
I know we are.
Next stop would have been... did we go?
I can't remember. I think Mykonos was before that too.
Was Mykonos before that? So, I'll just skip over Mykonos. Not a lot happened.
No, Mykonos was such a short stop. It was kind of disappointing. Like we wanted to be there longer because that's like one of those iconic places that you think about.
Yeah.
We did get some pictures in the streets, which was cool, but it was like we were there for what?
4
or 5 hours.
Yeah.
It was a really short port.
Yeah.
In the evening too.
Yeah.
So stuff shuts down at like 8:00 at night.
Right. Apparently, if you're there on the weekends, it is a lively place. But we weren't there for that. So, I guess the next logical thing that we could talk about would be Kusadesi, which is
it's not Kusadesi. There's no E in it. It's Kushadashi.
Kushadashi.
Yes.
Whatever. I can't pronounce it.
Because it's got the S with the hook on the bottom.
Forgive my horrible
Kushadashi.
ability to speak. But well known for being the knockoff bag capital of the world.
It's Orest. My gosh. Everywhere we went.
So today, for this day, we did this was the second excursion that we did with MSC. And another mistake I think that we made on this cruise, only because
we could have gone there on our own, I think.
We absolutely could have gone on our own. However, what I will say is that like sometimes these are places that are just better to have a guide, because you can walk around and not really know a lot of what's happening. You have to stop and like read everything, and I don't really have a lot of patience sometimes to just stand and read things. I like to just listen and hear definitely kind of like what the guide has to say, because each guide is a little bit different. I'm sure that they are given a script to kind of go over things, but they also have their own little flair that they like to add to stuff. So, and the biggest problem with this was that we did have a guide.
We went to Ephesus.
Yes.
That was where our excursion went.
But the problem was that we didn't have any hearing devices. So there was a group of like...
You had to be close to the guide, and it was a big group.
20... There's probably more than that, I guess. Because we were on a coach bus. Yeah, we were on a coach bus. So 40 probably people. At
least.
Not split into two different groups. And it was just this one guy who was very nice.
He was a good tour guide.
Yeah, and he definitely was trying to explain things and trying to speak louder. But there are so many other people there also having the same things done. It's very difficult to hear. So my recommendation, do this as a private tour. You can certainly do it for almost the same price as you could do it through the cruise line as a private excursion or third-party excursion, where you'll have a listening device and you can hear a lot more clearly what's happening. But it was really cool. I mean, it's an awesome archaeological site that they're still uncovering to this day, just like they are in Pompeii, I believe. They're still uncovering things from Pompeii, which is pretty cool. And now, a big disadvantage of this, though, too, again, was the mandatory stops that you have to make along the way or after.
Can you just make it brief, because I don't like to talk about the things I didn't like.
Yes, we'll make it brief. You have to stop.
Long.
You have to stop at the carpet making factory, where they surround you like wolves and try to get you to buy things, and at the leather making factory, where they claim that their leather goods are going to Versace and Louis Vuitton or whatever the name brands are. I'm not sure that they're actually going there. They try to tell you that's a huge discount. It's really not. It's a ripoff. So
people still bought stuff.
I did. I felt really bad for them.
We didn't. There were a couple ladies. I think they were German.
Yeah.
The ladies that sat in front of us on the bus.
They were funny.
They were hilarious.
Yeah.
Like when we were when we finally got out of the factory place.
Yeah.
They were like talking about it, and they were like, "What did she say?"
I can't remember.
As they say in English. She say like "nice try" or something like that. It was hilarious, just the way she said it.
We kind of grouped together to find our way out of there.
Yeah, there was like 6 of us that maneuvered our way out of this place to avoid the people trying to sell us.
I definitely think that you should. I think Turkey too can get a bad rap just because of its overall culture, its location, where it's at. Turkey felt like a very safe place. The port does not have like these big ginormous walls where I'm sure that there were probably like military police or something around, but
there were. We saw them occasionally. Yeah,
but I don't remember it something like Jamaica where like you literally should not leave the port
unless you're on an excursion.
Right. It was pretty safe. And I actually wish that we would have had more time to kind of go out and explore a little bit more Turkey.
After our excursion, we got dropped off like near the markets, so it was actually really nice. We got off the bus and just started making our way, walking through the markets, and that's where we found a really cool little place to sit and eat. There was only 2 other families in there.
I think what was really funny, that I thought was funny, was that where they dropped us off at was like, it's kind of like the central part of where like the cruisers come out in. Right there in the middle is a cart of food. And it is literally American food. Hamburgers,
hot dogs,
cheeseburgers,
chicken tenders,
french fries. Like, I'm like, wow, know your audience, right? Like, so we definitely.
I mean, there was every place that was like that though. There was a line.
There was, yeah, people,
and it was so funny because we were like,
I feel bad.
We can get this food anytime. We're not going to eat that here.
And I get it. You want to get something that feels comfortable, right? You want to enjoy it. You're paying for it.
Well, there's some people that are just, they're picky and they don't like other food. They don't like, different spices and things like that. So, if you're one of those people that just prefers to have chicken tenders or a burger, you can get that pretty much everywhere you go.
Yeah.
Somewhere's going to have it.
Yeah. So, but we did. So we started just walking through the shops looking for bags. That's what you were looking for. Until we found a place to eat. That's your segue to talk about where we ate.
My 2 cups of coffee aren't doing it for me. So we came across this little place and I was like, this place looks kind of cool. So I was actually looking it up on my phone as we're standing outside of it just to see what the pictures of the food looked like and if there was any reviews on it or anything, just to see is the food actually good? Because there was only a couple people in there, which that doesn't mean that it's not good. It was pretty far out into the markets. I think just there weren't a lot of people going out that way. And there was a family who spoke perfect English. I don't know if they were American or not, but they said they were sitting right by the edge and they were almost done with their food. And they looked at us and saw us standing there and we were looking at the menu now. And they're like, you guys should eat here. They're like, we've been coming here for the last 10 years. We know the owner now just from coming here. They're like, you will like the food. They're like, just sit down and eat.
They were paid to say that.
And honestly, if they were, it's fine because the food was good.
The food was absolutely amazing.
Yeah. I liked the entree that we got and shared, but I actually think I enjoyed the appetizer part more.
Yeah.
With I don't even know what was all on it, but it was so good.
I don't know either.
It was delicious.
It's tough to know, I think, sometimes, even because I think the kid who was kind of our server didn't really speak a lot of really great English.
No.
The guy who owned the restaurant did speak English.
Yeah.
But
and he came over to our table a few times.
Yeah. I don't know. But it just the food was really great.
And we had apple tea at the end.
We did, yeah. You have to, I think, really, when you're going to go venture out and try something new. I mean, that's the whole point of taking a cruise like this or doing something like that is to try something different.
And most of the time, if you can get just far enough away from where it's super touristy,
right,
the prices are not expensive.
Right.
So even if you don't like the food that you get, you're not spending a ton of money on it.
Yeah.
So maybe, I think we spent $25, maybe $30 on the whole meal for the two of us. It would have been US dollars.
Yeah, I don't remember, but it wasn't that expensive.
It was not expensive for the two of us for this whole little appetizer
for
plate.
a huge amount of food that we got.
Yes, and then this huge entree that they split between the two of us.
Yeah, it was really good. And again, wouldn't have happened if we wouldn't have just walked a little bit deeper into the trenches of knockoff bags and
knockoff shoes, jerseys.
Yeah.
Oh, there was so much stuff. It was crazy. Belts. Boots.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I almost kind of wish I would have gotten myself a little belt bag or whatever the heck you call those things.
Well,
but I didn't. I waited. Oh, here's a funny thing though, right? So in Turkey, right? So when you get there, if you are looking to buy a bag, know that it is a negotiable fare, right? Just because of what it says on the price.
Not just everything.
Yeah, everything.
Everything is negotiable.
Right. You can haggle. So, but understand something that if you really want to get a good price, you do need to venture deeper into some of these places and haggle with these people. Because right before we were about to get back on the ship, we went and looked in one of the bag stores.
I told Josh it wasn't a good idea.
And I was like, I just want to go see because I might want to get a crossbody bag or something for me. And I found one that I liked, and we're looking at it, and the guy literally says, genuine fake, right?
He said those words
were his words
to Josh.
Right. But then he still tried to get me to spend $150 or something.
No, it was $400 or $500.
No, it wasn't
yes,
that much.
It was.
It wasn't that much.
Yes, it was.
I don't think so.
Yes, it was.
I'm pretty sure it was only like $150 American.
No, it wasn't.
But
Josh
I was like,
does not remember.
But I was like, no way I'm gonna pay that. Like, you just told me like this is a genuine knockoff. Like I'm like I'll give you like, I'd give you maybe $50 if that. So they're not as willing to haggle right there near the ship. So definitely
no,
venture
because they
further
know
in.
this is your last chance before
Exactly.
you get on the ship.
Exactly, and he knows that there's probably some other sap that's going to come through here and buy that bag. So, but yeah, I think that like that kind of really covers the gist of our.
Oh, you know
cruise.
what I think it was actually? I think I might be thinking of like the turkey money.
Yeah.
He wanted you to spend euros.
Right. Yeah.
He was trying to get Josh to spend euros, and we're like,
And I said, no, I'm going to pay with Turkish lira. And he still would like not budge on like what the Turkish lira price would have been.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, not way.
which would have been like the same as
No way,
150 euros.
It would have been. It was more than the 2 bags that Taylor got, which we didn't talk about at the end of Ephesus. But yeah, I mean, like that's really kind of like the gist of our Greek cruise. And again, I don't know how helpful that this episode was for you listening to it, whatnot. But you know, the running theme here always is to like go out, be adventurous, do something a little bit different, try something new, and just set your expectations properly before you go and
Just
do
be aware of your time when you get off the ship. Make sure you check when you're getting off the ship to see what time, like, final boarding is, and be back before the final boarding time, not at the final boarding time.
Give yourself at least 30 to 45 minutes.
I was going to say 30 minutes to an hour to be back on the ship. That way, in case there's a line for security, and...
Well, I mean, if there's a line for security, they're not going to...
No, they're not. But, like, that way, in case there is a line for security, like, hopefully you're not waiting in as long of a line because the later you get back, the longer that line's going to be because everybody else is waiting until last minute to get back, too. So then you can get back on the ship and know, like, I'm on here with plenty of time.
Yeah.
Less stress, really.
So anything else to add?
I don't think so.
I guess at a later date, we will dive deep into our Jerusalem tour. I don't really want to talk about it just yet because you can't really go there. So we'll wait.
Yeah.
Talk about it in the future
I'll just
episode.
say that I'm really glad that we got to go when we did because that was like a...
Super cool.
That was definitely a, like, once-in-a-lifetime visit.
Yeah.
Like, I highly doubt we'll ever... At some point in time, I'm sure you'll be able to go back there, but who knows how long that's going to be.
Right.
And, you know, we got to see everything that we wanted to see, so it's not one of those places that we really feel like we need to go back.
Right.
So I'm glad we got to do it when we did. We got really lucky with our timing.
Yeah. So we... I don't think we've talked about our future trips on this particular podcast.
No, we haven't because we haven't really announced all of our future trips.
Right. So we do have some upcoming funsy things that are going to be happening. If you're part of our Patreon, then you already know what's going on.
Mostly know what's going on.
Yeah, we're going to be sharing more details here over the next few days because we've almost got a final itinerary for
What's really funny, you're talking about this, and I almost said, you'll hear it on our bonus Muggle cast.
On our bonus Mugglecast.
Because I listen.
we need something like that.
I listen to this podcast called Mugglecast, and they have a Patreon, and they mention it every week on their episodes that in our bonus Mugglecast, we'll be talking about whatever, and that's their Patreon podcast, is the bonus Mugglecast. That's literally what I was just thinking about, because I listen to it like every day.
But obviously we don't have... what I will say is that we will have some special podcast episodes coming, hopefully.
We've been talking about them, so
they'll be recorded.
Hopefully it'll work out the way we are planning.
Yeah, they'll probably be recorded from the car. I can give everybody a hint that we have one thing that we haven't really announced yet that's coming. Maybe we'll try a podcast after having 1 or 2 strong islands, right? So a lot of cool stuff.
If you've been watching, you know.
Yeah, right. So a lot of cool stuff is coming up. If there is something that maybe we should have mentioned from this podcast episode, certainly let us know. If there's something specific you want us to talk about from our past travels, let us know. We can definitely dive deeper into that in future episodes. And with that being said, what will we talk about next week?
I don't know. What should we talk about next week?
It's an excellent question. I don't know. Maybe somebody out there listening will give us something to talk about. If not, we'll figure it out.
We have plenty to talk about. It's just what should we talk about next?
Absolutely. So, but yeah, so we will wait to hear back from all of you, and you'll hear us in the next one.
Or see us.
In the next one.
Bye.